There's no question that we've seen a high number of blown engines this season. It was discovered that most of these blown engines have been victims of overheating, especially on the cars with the wedge noses, like the SAR, the Inglesby, and the Zenus. So coming into this race, all cars are now required to have 2 grille openings, and the use of grille tape has been banned. This seems to have worked so far, as we have not had any blown engines in practice in qualifying. However, qualifying wasn't entirely without attrition, as it started raining during time trials for the second round. The session had to be stopped after only 20 cars posted a time, and visibility became a major issue. One of those 20 cars was AJ Young, who will start round 2 in 18th. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Scott, it's all yours. Thank you, Earl. Brenda Riggs took the Cromwell Pull Award for round number 1. Race day turned out to be very sunny. Mike Andrews in the 500 was the second car on the front row, but Riggs got a very good start, and everybody is fanning out as they head into turn number 1. Can they get through clean? Yes, they will. Surprisingly enough, that was a huge wad of cars going through the first corner, and I'm very surprised that nobody went off. However, we would have first lap shenanigans after all. Barney Ward making his first start, runs into the back of Todd Stater coming into Station 5. Barney Ward started in the back of the field, and he is not doing himself any favors. Brenda Riggs has built up a very comfortable lead coming into the carousel. She runs the turn wide, she's off the course and headed straight for the tire walls. She's got that car cranked to the right, but she hits the wall, and she will go out of the race on the very first lap from the pole position. That's got to be gut-wrenching for Riggs, although there was evidence that the car could have continued on, but Riggs herself promptly retired. This will put Mike Andrews in the lead. Benji Flynn and Tyson Lautenschlager are right behind him, fighting for the second spot. Andrews has not been doing himself too many favors in the TM lights lately, although he will be looking to improve his image with a good run today. Here's a look at what happened to Rachel Rainsford shortly after Brenda Riggs went off the course. She gets helped around by the 102 of Laura Cyrus. Rainsford gets bogged down in the sand, and she will need a tow back to the pits. Here is Seiji Dejao trying to make a 3-wide pass coming into Station 5, but he loses control, gets into Leigh Gruel, and forces both cars off the track. However, they continue on, although I don't think Gruel appreciated that. Here is Barney Ward once again, who did not pit to repair that 92 car. And Ward goes off the track in the carousel. He's got that car turned as far to the right as possible, trying to stay off the tire walls, and it looks like he's going to rejoin the racing surface, but now he is even further behind. More problems for Leigh Gruel as he locks up his brakes, spins the 46 car out, and collects Bob Steffens, taking them both into the sand. Like Rachel Rainsford the lap before, they will both get stuck and need to be towed back to the pits. Coming to the end of the second lap, here is Vijay Pashanda, who's been very fast in the Math Motors machine, and he goes off in the final corner. This will not be a good day for Pashanda after he's been putting up some good results in the early part of the season. Pashanda will need to be towed back to the pits. I have a feeling the cleanup crews will be very busy today. Tyson Lautenschlager cuts down a tire after running third in the opening laps, but now looks like he's going to finish much worse than that car seems to be capable of. Here we have Bob Steffens and Leigh Gruel rejoining the race, and Steffens doesn't seem to be too happy about Gruel spinning him off the road on lap 2. Seiji Dejao had to pit after experiencing a tire rub, and here he is going off the course in Station 5 once again. Without a car on his right to act as a shield, Dejao slides right out into the sand, but he will keep going and rejoin the race. There goes Taylor Brillin by. She had to pit after an incident of her own in Station 5. Leslie Riggs has slowed on the track. She has a flat tire on that 50 car. This is going to be a huge blow for that team. Riggs did not qualify that well, but in practice, she showed that she had a very good car as the run went on. Leslie Riggs just can't seem to catch a break. She got into an incident at Carbondale last week, not of her own doing. And here's her teammate, Harry Asinola, going up in smoke. Riggs Motorsports is fielding SARs, which have those problematic wedge noses. The shape of those noses has been restricting airflow to the engine, and it doesn't look like that the new rules are helping Enola too much. And you saw Lucas Sweeney in the 8 car getting held up by Enola. Sweeney is headed into the pits as well. Mike Andrews makes his first pit stop on lap 7. Benji Flynn in the 36 follows him. Earl McDermott stayed out and assumed the lead of the race on this lap. He's doing a pretty good job representing everyone here at the network in his first start of the season for Zenith. Of course, Earl is the son of former ARLA champion Gregory McDermott, and he's sort of been taking after his father, competing on and off in the series ever since we acquired the rights to broadcast ARLA races in 2003. Earl's going to dive into the pits this time by, as well as a majority of the field. This will hand the lead over to Ricky Navarro, who pitted very early, and he's got quite a comfortable lead over Benji Flynn right now, although I don't think his advantage is going to last too much longer because tire wear has been a bit of an issue all weekend. Navarro has been facing some family issues lately. His father, Garrett, who owns a chain of surf shops in California, has been battling an illness. So Ricky's been visiting him in between race weekends, and I think that's gotta be pretty stressful. Coming into Station 5, there's the pink car of Flynn, and Navarro goes right off the track. This is not what Navarro needs right now. He's gonna go right through the sand trap and rejoin the racing surface, but there goes Flynn by the 34 for the lead. Mike Andrews had a very slow pit stop and fell quite a few positions. However, he is still safely inside the top 10, and right behind him is the 672 of Calvin O'Reilly. The front end had to be taken off of that car after he ran into the back of someone in Station 5, but he is still running up inside the top 10. Defending series champion Kevin Monroe has been working his way up the field very slowly, but then he goes and runs into the back of Scott Dollitz in Station 5, and Monroe, whose season has gotten off to a terrible start, will have to drop out of the race. Libby Bell has been running in the top 5 for much of the race. Bell recently made some controversial remarks about team owner William Power, but Power then insisted that he pulled Bell aside and agreed that they would drop the matter, and that seems to be true as Bell has been running a very quick pace with no problems so far. Barney Ward goes off the track once again after race leader Benji Flynn puts him a lap down. Ward, in his miserable debut, becomes the next victim of the sand trap and would have to be towed back to the pits. Kiriki Hitsuno has been struggling today despite her background in open-wheel road course racing, and now she compounds her problems by running into the back of Rybert Scott. That is going to take Hitsuno out of the race. Now, for much of her career, Hitsuno has had a habit of piling into wrecks that she had no business being in. She was born blind in her right eye, and she tends to blame many of her accidents on her lack of depth perception. Ricky Navarro makes his second pit stop with 9 laps to go. He was able to hang on to the second spot despite running on very old tires and his earlier spin, so maybe he can squeeze a good finish out of this after all. Oh look, here's Barney Ward. I wonder what he's going to do. And there he goes, spinning off the course in Station 5. I really think that Ward should just pull it off the track and quit at this point. He's got nothing to gain by running around and spinning all over the place. All that he's doing for himself right now is making AJ Young look good. Benji Flynn hits the pit lane, and you're going to see Libby Bell and Earl McDermott going by to take over the first and second positions. And Libby Bell would remain the leader after a very quick pit stop. Benji Flynn fell back to fourth with Navarro second and McDermott in third, one of his better runs in quite some time. Ashley Tucker has been needing a good run. Her season has not been going so well ever since her victory in the rookie shootout. However, today she is running up inside the top 10, and there really isn't anybody behind her who can challenge her. And here's yet another shot of Barney Ward, and predictably, he goes off the track. Mercifully, he gets bogged down in the sand, so he'll be out of everyone's hair for a while. Mike Andrews fell even further down the running order after this latest cycle of pit stops. He is now outside the top 15. A certain pit crew is going to have some explaining to do, and you saw behind Andrews that Kiriki Hitsuno is still in the race, so sorry about that mistake there. Calvin O'Reilly is still having a very strong run despite the front end missing on that 672 car. O'Reilly competed in the ARLA Thunder Trucks last year and didn't do much. However, this season it looks like he's got the speed to do wonders for that small team. In the meantime, Libby Bell would remain unopposed in the final laps, and she will come across the line to take her second career victory. Ricky Navarro finishes second. Pitting early worked out very well for him. Navarro has not won a race since 2005, but with a result like this, I'd say that this season looks very promising for him. Benji Flynn finishes third. That's been one of his better finishes ever since he went to Dalitz. He took the position from Earl McDermott in the closing laps of the race. Ashley Tucker finishes fifth. Andy Pearson, a very quiet sixth place for the number 2 car. Calvin Arela brings his heavily damaged car home 7th. Bigsby Foot, 8th, making this the second PSI car in the top 10. Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. in 9th, and then Lucas Sweeney rounds out the top 10 after starting towards the rear of the field. And now moving on to round number 2, Jason Bates takes the Cromwell Pool Award with Jason Teller on his outside. They both get off to a pretty good start as you see some people already trying to go 3 wide. Drew Eisenman, who started 4th, is trying to peek to the inside of Teller, and there's contact between Teller and Bates. Bates goes off the road in turn 1. More cars are off, and we have a big crash. One car is upside down, and several people are spinning all over the place. And it was Tiffany Matthews that flipped her car. She's in a very vulnerable position starting in the midfield. And, Eichholz slams into the tire barrier and shoots back up onto the track. And Tiffany Matthews goes for a wild ride. She would walk away from this accident, but this would be the second week in a row where Matthews doesn't even make it past the first couple of corners. Let's go on board with Jarko Forsström, who I understand tagged Jacob Eichholz right in front of him. Eichholz swings wide, and Forsström just gets into the back of him, and then he immediately gets into his teammate, Ben Atkins, in the 84 car. However, the difference is that Atkins keeps going and Eichholz, well, doesn't. AJ Young qualified 18th because it started raining after only 20 cars posted a qualifying time. However, he's not going to be able to take advantage of his starting position because of that. In fact, Young is the car that sent the 116 rolling. However, to be fair to Young, there wasn't really much he could have done about that, as he was stuck in a huge wad of cars with nowhere to go, unlike so many of his previous incidents. Bill Tissam in the 07 also got a big piece of this. He's riding behind Namimura coming through the first corner. There's Eichholz going into the wall, and then Tissam himself goes into the tire wall with the help of Zachary Zins in the 99. And Tissam's going to go out of the race as well. Gary D'Souza was one of the cars trying to make it 3 wide through the first corner, and he got into AJ Young twice, but then he gets very lucky and makes it through this wreck. He just narrowly avoids hitting both of the Eichholz Autosport cars. Here's an aerial shot focusing on Tiffany Matthews in the 116. Eichholz and Forsström dive bomb the first corner, and then the 231 and 0 get together, which starts this whole mess. And what a ride Matthews took, with several more cars getting swept up as well. There's Michael Madrigal in the 64 getting turned around. We're still not done wrecking on the first lap. Zachary Zins coming into Station 5, runs right into the back of Jarko Forsström. Riding on board with Jason Bates, who dropped back to 3rd, and Bates now goes off in the carousel. Our pole sitter drives right off into the sand again, but unlike Brenda Riggs in round 1, Jason Bates is going to return to the racetrack, although he now loses several positions. He's even losing spots to cars that got swept up in that first corner incident, such as Ben Atkins in the 84 right there. Here is Derek Dudding holding up a few cars at the start of lap 2, but he goes off in the first corner, and Derek Dudding runs right into the tire walls. That's one way to let people by, I suppose. While his teammates Derek Dudding and AJ Young were experiencing problems with crashing into things, Paul Lyons is running in the 4th position after having a fantastic qualifying run in the Team Burr 54 car. However, the Burr cars have been historically very underpowered, so Paul Lyons is starting to drop through the field as he saw James West in the 69 go by, but Lyons is still gaining considerable TV time. Leading the race after all of the first lap chaos is Lawrence Burr, the son of John Burr, who owns the Lyons, Dudding, and Young cars. And you see that Lyons is off the track in Station 5. Tough break for Lyons, who needed the TV time for that underfunded team. Anyway, Lawrence Burr was picked up by Griesberger Racing this season after spending some time in the M&J development program. He had actually received an offer to drive for his father's team in the Elite Series when Team Burr started up in 2010, but the younger Burr was very quick to refuse that offer, and frankly, I don't blame him. A few moments earlier, here's Jason Teller who runs into the back of Drew Eisenman while running in the 3rd spot. Teller looked to be good enough to get Zenas another top 5 today, but that's all going to go to waste as he would drop out of the race after this wreck. Kyle Gaffigan blows up on the 3rd lap. Gaffigan, who previously competed in Formula Overdrive, has gotten off to a very poor start this season, and this is not going to make things much better. Back to Drew Eisenman, who lost second to Gary D'Souza after being hit by Jason Teller, and now Eisenman goes off the track and into the wall in the carousel. So 2 of the MRD cars go out of the race in the same lap. And now here is Holden Roberts in the 55 car for Jaguar Racing, going off the track as well on lap 3. Roberts actually got off to a pretty good start this race, but that's quickly going downhill as he would get bogged down in the sand and requires a tow back to the pits. Here is the last remaining MRD Motorsports car of Joseph Howard as he goes for the lead, so obviously Howard is faring much better than his teammates. Gary D'Souza in that other yellow and black car follows close behind Howard, trying to take second from Lawrence Burr. Patrick Henderson has been dreadfully off the pace this season, and now he's going to compound his problems by driving right off the track in the carousel and hitting the wall. Henderson has some pretty heavy damage to that car, but he would keep going after receiving a tow back to the pits. Edwin Schwartzlowski is showing some speed in the opening laps, running up inside the top 10 until he decides to spin off the course. And like many others before him, Schwartzlowski is going to get bogged down in the sand and he will need a tow. Here is Ryan Gregory making his debut for Nitro Racing. He's having a respectable debut so far until he decides to drive off in the carousel. Gregory tries to keep it off the wall, but he can't, and Ryan Gregory will go out of the race in his very first start. Today has not been a good day for the debutante drivers. Here's Holden Roberts running a lap down. He goes off in turn 1. He tries to get back on the track, but he hits the wall. A bad day gets worse for Holden Roberts as he will go out of the race. Gary D'Souza is the first of the leaders to come into the pits. Race leader Joseph Howard decides to stay out. Jessica Graham in the 59 will follow suit on this lap. Graham has a top 10 run going so far. On the next lap, Joseph Howard makes his pit stop, and when everything cycles out, Howard is still the leader with Gary D'Souza close behind. D'Souza has a very fast car today, and he's probably going to be quite the challenge for Howard. Oh, something's gone wrong with the 17! Howard is slow on the track as Gary D'Souza blasts by for the lead. MRD Motorsports just can't catch a break today as Joseph Howard slows on the track and he will need to be towed to the pits. Howard's problem was not terminal, but this day is now going to become very long. After making their first start at Carbondale last week, the Doppelgang is back here at Road America. This Doppelgang car is running up inside the top 10, although we don't know which car number this is or who is driving it once again. These cars were not so much of a problem last week because they both dropped out. However, this week they are both running and running strong. So we will try to identify this car after speaking with the team and scoring later on. Here's a car we can identify, Lucas Flint in the 056. The Like Lighter Racing Machine is also running up inside the top 10. Chris Winter drove this car the last time it was on the track, which was at Daytona, and he blew his engine. So hopefully Flint can prove that this car can finish races. Here's Dale Hill making another start in his limited schedule for Bobby Dollar Racing. He runs the carousel wide. He is off the course. Can he keep it off the wall? No, he won't. And Dale Hill will go out of the race. Shortly afterwards, Jason Bates is going to go off in the carousel for the second time today. He went off on the very first lap after starting on the pole, but this time Bates will hit the wall and go out of the race. Tough break for Bates, whose race went downhill right off the bat. And now here's Jessica Graham blowing up in the 59 after running up towards the front all day. Graham has shown some decent speed, but the S-Tech Autosport team has not finished a single race yet. Race leader Gary D'Souza kicks off the second round of pit stops. Lawrence Burr and that still yet to be identified Doppelgang car will stay out this time by. Lawrence Burr has fallen back a bit ever since being passed by Joseph Howard. The next time around, the Doppelgang car pits and Lawrence Burr will reassume the lead of the race. Scott Morales running right behind the 9 car is a lap down. Makoto Yamada's 22 car is going to go up in smoke. Yamada had a great run going at Carbondale until he fell behind in the closing laps, but he will not be able to repeat that performance today. Here is Lane Cranston in the 114, battling with Barton Sandy, and Cranston loses the car and goes spinning off into the sand. And a dismal season continues for Lane Cranston. As I mentioned before, Scott Morales is running a lap down. The Groves Racing cars have been very lacking in speed lately, and now Morales is off, and he's in the wall. But Morales is going to get going immediately. Oh, and he slams into the tire wall. I'm not sure what happened there, but that damage is going to take Morales out of the race. With just a handful of laps remaining, Gary D'Souza holds a commanding lead over the rest of the field. D'Souza has proven himself to be very fast at the road races. In fact, shortly after his debut in 2010, he finished second in his first road race, which was at Mosport. Greg Woodard arrived at Road America after a fantastic performance in the Team Master Cup race at Carbondale a couple weeks ago. He was a factor to win the race, but unfortunately he dropped back to 4th after the final restart. But today, Woodard is doing a good job following up on that finish with a top 10 run going so far. Eric Jackson is the highest-ranked Gravity Racing driver in the points standings. He was 21st coming into this race, so Gravity Racing has a bit of work to do for the future. But today, Eric Jackson is running up inside the top 10, and right behind him is his teammate Todd Wlodarczyk, who grabbed 2 wins in place of Eric Jackson last season. Jackson was injured at Alberta and had to miss the rest of the 2011 campaign. Here's Allie Riggs running in 14th place with the front end missing on that 19 car after she got into an incident in Station 5. But despite her misfortunes today, Riggs is on track to finish her first race of the year. She parked the car at Daytona and had a mechanical failure at Carbondale, so coming into this race, she has 0 points under the new rules, which state that a driver must finish the race in order to score points. Lucas Flint has made a bit of progress since we last saw him. He is now up to 3rd, running right behind 2nd place Casey Campbell. Flint is really showing what that team is capable of when they don't crash. With just 2 laps to go, the battle for 7th heats up between the Gravity Racing cars and Greg Woodard. Oh, and Todd Wlodarczyk's got a problem. He's slow on the racetrack. Smoke is coming from that 71 car. And Todd Wlodarczyk is done with just 2 laps to go. But in the meantime, here comes Gary D'Souza up the hill and towards the checkered flag to take his first ARLA Elite Series victory. And here are the rest of the top 10. Casey Campbell was able to hang on to the 2nd spot. Lucas Flint was never much of a challenge for her, but still, Flint ran a great race today on his partial schedule for Lechliter Racing. And in 4th, we have, oh dear, the Doppelgang cars finished 4th and 5th, and we still have not confirmed who is driving which car, but we will have to get back to that later. Lawrence Burr finishes 6th, which puts both Griesberger cars in this race up in the top 10. Phil Summers was in round 1 and he finished 13th. Greg Woodard held off Eric Jackson for the 7th spot. Mac Ryland gets his first career top 10 finish with a 9th place showing, and then Barton Sandy in the 999 car rounds out the top 10. And now let's look at the point standings. Libby Bell is the new points leader, holding a 35-point advantage over Casey Campbell. Herbie Finkelberg falls back to 3rd. He only finished 17th in his round, coming off of his victory at Carbondale. Ashley Tucker, Andy Pearson, and Yevgeny Kuznetsov are in a 3-way tie for 4th, 48 points behind the leader. Ricky Navarro is 7th. Calvin Arailer is making a lot of noise for the underfunded Dangerous Dog Racing operation. I believe they only have a small dental clinic on board that car. And then we have a tie for 9th between Bigsby Foot and Gary D'Souza, who moves up into the top 10 with his victory. And now let's look at 11 through 20. Benji Flynn is 65 points behind the leader. Laura Cyrus is 12th. Eric Jackson jumps up to 13th with his 8th place finish. David Krikorian and Alex Carson are tied for 14th. Greg Woodard moves up to 16th. Vijay Pashanda is 17th, although he will have to skip next week's race at Piqua due to his TM Master Cup Series commitments. Philip Borland will drive the Pie car next week. Ben Adkins is 18th, Joseph Howard 19th, and then Seiju Dejao rounds out the top 20.